Let's go back in time. Picture this. It's July 12th, 1943. You're Dr. Paul Pfaffinger, a doctor aboard the German submarine U-441. Your only real job is to patch up wounded men. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, 3 British fighters are on top of you. There's no alarm, no warning, nothing. Your captain is hit, bleeding out on the bridge. Within 30 seconds, 10 of your crewmates are dead. Every other officer is down, and suddenly it's on you, the doctor, to take command of this shattered U-boat and somehow get it home through hostile waters. Now, this isn't some movie script. This was the terrifying new reality for Germany's U-boat crews, a world where the line between living and dying was no longer measured in minutes, but in heartbeats. Those are Dr. Pfaffinger's own words about that attack. 5 seconds. I mean, just stop and think about that. 5 seconds. That's just enough time for your brain to register the danger, but absolutely no time to do anything about it. In that, right there, is the heart of our story today. How time itself was compressed into nothing, and how the disappearance of a few crucial minutes completely altered the course of World War II. So that's the big question we're going to dive into. How did this happen? It's really a story about a hidden war, a technological arms race fought in secret labs and high above the cold Atlantic. A war where the prize wasn't land, but time itself. How did the hunters become the hunted so completely, so quickly? Well, to understand it, we've got to wind back the clock a bit and see what that safety net looked like in the first place. To really get the scale of the collapse, you first have to understand just how dominant the U-boats were. In the early years of the war, they were the absolute masters of the Atlantic. There was no question. They were a strategic weapon that was bringing Great Britain, an island that depends entirely on imports, to the very edge of starvation. And if you want proof, just look at these numbers from 1942. They are staggering. In that 1 year alone, U-boats sank nearly 1,100 Allied ships. And look at that exchange ratio. For every single U-boat the Allies managed to sink, the Germans sank almost 13 of their ships in return. This wasn't just working, it was a catastrophically effective strategy. They were choking the life out of the Allied war effort, and they did it with a ton of confidence because they had this one critical advantage, an escape plan that almost always worked. And that escape plan was the crash dive. It was a perfectly drilled, high-stakes ballet. A lookout on the bridge spots a tiny speck in the sky, maybe 8 or 10 miles out. The diving alarm, the klaxon, blares through the boat, and the entire crew moves as one. They could get that entire submarine under the surface in about 30 seconds. And because they could spot planes so far away, they had this comfortable safety window, 3, sometimes 4 minutes. There's a war diary from U-156 that notes spotting a plane, diving, and the first bombs didn't even hit the water until a full 90 seconds after they were already safely underwater. That 90-second buffer, that was their life insurance policy. But of course, the Allies weren't just sitting around watching their ships go to the bottom. They knew very clearly that if they couldn't solve this U-boat problem, they were going to lose the war. And so this frantic race began. A race to shrink that 3-minute window, to claw back those precious seconds the U-boats depended on. Now, the Allied counterpunch wasn't one single invention. It was a rapid 1-2-3 combination of new tech. First, you get airborne radar, the ASV Mark II. It could spot a U-boat, sure, but the Germans figured out how to build a detector, called Medox, that could hear the radar pulses, so they still had a warning. Then came the next piece of the puzzle, a brilliantly simple and terrifying invention that was designed to solve one very specific problem: hunting in the dark. This was the lee light. See, U-boats loved surfacing at night. It was the perfect cover to recharge their batteries. The problem for the Allies was that their early radars would lose the U-boat in the clutter of the waves, in that last mile of the approach. The lee light fixed this perfectly. The moment the radar operator lost the signal, this ridiculously powerful searchlight would just flick on automatically, and bam, the U-boat was frozen in a beam of light. Suddenly, their greatest ally, the darkness, was turned against them. And this shows you just how big of a deal that was. That 2 to 3 minute warning they used to get from their Meadows Tox detectors, it was slashed. Gone. Now they had maybe 30 seconds, total. An attacking plane could cover that last mile in about half a minute. By the time you subtract the crew's reaction time, they had maybe 15 seconds to get that boat underwater. On July 5th, 1942, U-502 became the first victim, caught and sunk with less than 20 seconds between being lit up and the depth charges hitting. The clock was shrinking, and it was shrinking fast. But even with the lee light, the U-boats could still hear the radar coming. They had a warning, even if it was short. They knew they were being hunted. The real turning point, the technological knockout blow that changed everything, came in March of 1943, and it was something they couldn't hear, couldn't detect, and frankly, didn't believe was even possible. It was called ASV Mark III, or centimetric radar. It worked on a wavelength that was so short, just 10 centimeters, that the German Medox detectors were totally deaf to it. They were designed to listen for longer waves. In fact, German scientists had actually told their on-high command that building a radar on such a high frequency was impossible. Well, they were wrong. And for the men on those U-boats, that scientific mistake was a death sentence. You can just feel the absolute shock in this official report from Kapitänleutnant Peter Kramer of U-333, one of the very first to get hit by this. No Medox warning. That sentence must have been terrifying to write, because it was unthinkable. The one system they trusted with their lives had just failed. Planes were just showing up, right on top of them, guns already blazing. Their entire survival strategy, built on that early warning, was gone. And this is what was left. 5 seconds. An Allied bomber with this new radar could spot them from 15 miles out and be on top of them in under 5 minutes. For the crew on the U-boat, the very first sign of danger was seeing a plane already diving at them. That gave them maybe 5 seconds. That's not enough time to dive. It's not even enough time to get the lookouts off the bridge and down the hatch. It's just enough time to realize you're about to die. The results of this technological ambush was immediate, and it was horrifying. The Bay of Biscay, which was the main route from their bases in France out into the Atlantic, it just became a killing ground. The crews started calling it the Valley of Death. What used to be a calculated risk had turned into a suicide mission. And all of this came to a head in one single, awful month, May of 1943. In German naval history, it's known simply as Black May. This was the moment the full, crushing weight of centimetric radar came down on the entire U-boat fleet. I mean, just look at this chart. The losses are unbelievable. In May alone, 41 U-boats were lost. That was over a quarter of their entire operational fleet, gone in 31 days. During the fight for just one convoy, ONS-5, they lost 6 U-boats and had another 11 damaged without sinking a single Allied ship. The average warning time before an attack had dropped to just 8 seconds. The hunters were now completely defenseless prey. The defeat was so absolute, it was admitted at the very highest level. This is from the war diary of Admiral Karl Donitz, the commander of the U-boats, a man who had staked his entire career on this weapon. On May 24, 1943, he wrote that the battle was lost. He ordered all surviving U-boats to pull out of the North Atlantic. It was a stunning admission that their most important strategic weapon was now obsolete. It happened almost overnight. And behind all the tech and the strategy, you have this almost unimaginable human cost. Of the roughly 40,000 men who served on U-boats during the war, 28,000 of them never came home. That is a 70% casualty rate. Let that sink in. It was the highest of any branch of service in any country in the entire war. To put it simply, if you are a U-boat crewman, your chance of surviving was less than 1 in 3. The sleek, deadly predator of 1942 had become something else. In the words of survivor Herbert Warner, they were iron coffins. And that says it all. The mindset completely flipped. Crews that used to set sail singing songs about victory now left port with the grim knowledge that only pure, dumb luck stood between them and a grave at the bottom of the ocean. So why does a story from 80 years ago still matter today? Well, because the fall of the U-boat isn't just a piece of history. It's a timeless and frankly a chilling lesson about technology, about vulnerability, and about survival. And its echoes are more relevant right now than ever before. The lessons here are crystal clear. Any advantage you think you have is always temporary. The Germans bet everything on their Maddox detector and their crash dive tactic, and that over-reliance became their single biggest weakness. Their margin of safety, that comfortable 3-minute window, felt permanent, but it disappeared in a flash when a new technology showed up. It proves that survival isn't about how strong you are right now, it's about how fast you can adapt to what's coming next. When you really boil it all down, this is the core truth. The Battle of the Atlantic, which Churchill himself called the dominating factor of the war, wasn't won by bravery or by better sailors. It was won in labs and factories. It was won by scientists and engineers who figured out how to steal seconds from their enemy, until there were literally no seconds left to steal. And that leaves us with a pretty sobering question for today. The U-boat crews trusted their lives to a margin of time, and they had no idea it was gone until it was too late. So think about our world now. With artificial intelligence, autonomous drones, cyber warfare, what is our critical margin of safety? What's the one technological blind spot we're all relying on without even knowing it? The story of the U-boat is a stark warning that your greatest advantage only lasts until someone finds a counter. And the scary part is, you probably won't know your window has closed until you hear the glass break.